Hi, my name is Harris. I'm one of your podcast hosts. I'm also a lawyer at Treadstone Law. For most Canadians, buying, selling, or refinancing real estate, a lawyer is the last thing on their mind. That's unfortunate because lawyers play a vital role in the process. But what choices do Canadians have? Lawyers can be very expensive. Well, Treadstone Law offers resources to Canadians so they have access to the information they need. Whether you sign up for a live workshop or a mailing list, we cover topics to help you make informed decisions and avoid costly mistakes. It's advice you can start using today, and best of all, it's free. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click the link below to get access right now. If you're looking to retain Treadstone Law, it's never been easier. Our entire process is online. From completing the retainer agreement to your signing appointment, everything is done from the comfort of your own home. We're your digital lawyers. The best part of it is that you don't pay anything when you're retaining our firm. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click on the link below to retain us right now. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to another episode of Hustle and Grit. Today, back on the podcast, I have a very special guest, Chris Dunlop. Chris is the broker of record and owner of Real Estate, Royal LePage Estate Realty out of Toronto, Ontario. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Hey, Harris. Thanks so much for having me back. It's a real pleasure.
It's always having a pleasure for having you on. And for those of you who are really getting some insight, want some insights on the real estate industry, Chris and I had a very good, candid conversation, and I'm going to be leaving that link to that podcast episode below. But today we're going to be talking all about business, because I know that a lot of entrepreneurs, and we've done this with a lot of broker owners, business owners that are very successful in their respective industries on starting a business, what it's like, how they run their business. And today we're going to be picking Chris's brain to see what it's like to run a real estate brokerage out of Toronto. Arguably, I'd say it's one of the most competitive markets in the world. I'd like to think that. Chris maybe could give me some insight on that.
I'll validate that for you for sure. Very competitive. That's what makes it fun too, though. So
it's fun, and it also could be a big headache as well. So we're going to be talking to Chris about all of that. To kick things off, Chris, I just want to ask, how'd you get into owning a brokerage? Was this something that, were you an entrepreneurial person from the beginning? Was it something that you're like, okay, it's an evolution? Maybe you get into real estate first, move into become a broker, and then you're the owner. What was your journey in starting or becoming the owner of Royal LePage Estate Realty?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the question. So it was definitely an evolution. I think that I've always been a relatively entrepreneurial person. And by that, I mean someone who sees opportunity and says, wow, that'd be an interesting way to make some money and make my mark on the world. But I actually started my entrepreneurial journey pretty late in life. And you can go back to the previous podcast. I won't go into all the details, but I actually started my career in the not-for-profit industry. But when my twin boys were born in 2005, it was time for me to be able to make some money to provide for my family and provide my kids with the life that I wanted them to have. And real estate was a natural fit for me. And real estate is fundamentally a very entrepreneurial pursuit, and it's a really great introduction to entrepreneurship. For those that don't know the industry well, when you become a realtor, really what you're doing is you're opening up your own business. And you are the chief operating officer, the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, the clerk, the administrator, the secretary. You do it all, right?
Yep.
And so it's a tremendous way to really learn and understand what it is to bring a business to life and to manage a business. Really for me, becoming a realtor was an entry point to being a broker owner. My mentor, Keith Burton, reminded me of that when I approached him about buying the brokerage. He's like, it's amazing, Chris, because you talked about this with me in your interview, and I'm like, I did. And I'd forgotten that was, sort of part of our conversation initially, and he was always very supportive and encouraging. And so, for me, I spent the time to really master and come to know and understand the industry as a salesperson. What was it to build a successful, thriving real estate business as a salesperson? And then as I moved into the broker ownership role, I really learned that it's fundamentally a different creature. But the foundation of being a highly successful salesperson helped me to become a great broker as well, because I could support and help the team achieve similar things for those who aspire to it. So it's been a fabulous journey. I never stop learning and growing, and has lots of headaches and lots of hard work, but great rewards as well.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely a lot of headaches and definitely a big reward, but I would say, and I want to do a little bit of pushback on what you just said. So
Yeah, for sure.
definitely, I agree with the part where you're saying that when you're a realtor, you're kind of working for yourself. But when you become a business owner, right, now you're not only responsible for yourself and your family, which is crazy enough as it is.
Yep.
Now you're taking on hires, right?
Yeah.
You might have support staff. You might have other realtors, right? What kind of train of thought or change in perspective did you need to have, if any, to go from, hey, I'm responsible for myself. This is a crazy industry. You eat what you kill. You have to be out there. There is no substitute for hard work. Nothing's gonna fall in my lap. I have to be up every day. Doesn't matter how I feel or what I want to do. I have to show up. Going from there to being like, okay, well, now I have to hire people around me to be able to delegate stuff, because obviously you can't do everything, right?
Nope.
And you have to be a good delegator, and you have to understand people, but you're also, with that delegation comes the responsibility, at least psychologically to some extent, that, hey, I have to make enough so that now this growing team flourishes as well. That's a whole different kind of stress.
100%.
Was that something that you're just like, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and do this? Was it like that? Was that first hire something that you're like thinking about? I just want to talk about that first hire. What was your perspective there?
Well, so I actually hired my first person as a realtor, right? So, I totally appreciate everything you said, and I agree with it 100%. The reality is, though, the most successful real estate agents are successful in part because they recognize what they're doing is running a business, and then as a business owner, there's things they're strong at, things they're okay at, and things they shouldn't be doing. And so as you grow as a realtor, learning and respecting the fact that leveraging other people's time when you have the money to make that investment is a way to supercharge your business. So in fact, the first hire I did was a full-time assistant when I was a realtor. And it's a big step to take. It's like, now I'm going to be responsible for the welfare of somebody else. I got to train them. I got to supervise them. I've got to manage them. I've got to support them. But what the payback is huge, because that person can do the things I'm not doing consistently, I don't have enough time to do, or the things that I'm not very good at. And that unleashes your time to be able to invest in the things that are money making that you're really good at. And I'm really pleased to say that the year after I hired a full-time assistant, I grew my real estate business 80%.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so it can unleash meteoric potential. And so when I got into the role of being a broker owner, I was very fortunate to be coming in as an owner of an established business with, established systems and processes and routines and budgets and an existing team. And it is a tremendous amount more responsibility. It's a lot more pressure when you have, a whole bunch of people working for you that have families at home. Not screwing up becomes important. Because it's not just your welfare and your family's welfare that's at stake, but also when you're supporting a large team of salespeople who are 100% commission based, you want to make sure that you're contributing to their success, because those people also have families that they've got to feed and bills they've got to pay, and real estate is a rough and tumble industry, and helping guide people to be their best selves and achieve their objectives is a lot of responsibility. And unfortunately, I love doing it, but it definitely can weigh on you.
So if you have a successful organization that's big, what do you think is the one quality that, I mean, it really depends on how I phrase the question, either one quality that you can't do without, or the first quality that you should be working on? I think it's the same question. It's a different angle on the same thing. What's like the first thing you need to learn when you have an organization and a crew of people, just depending on you to some extent. And I think they're depending on you, but they also got to depend on themselves. So I do want to share the responsibility. So it's not all on your shoulders; it's on theirs as well. But there is something that where you have to lead, you have to guide. So what's that first quality that somebody should be thinking about either refining or creating in order to be in a position like that?
So hard to pick one. So I think if I were to pick one, the willingness and ability to act and be bold, right? And so if I hearken back to the beginning of the pandemic, right, and if we think back to those days, none of us knew what was going on, none of us knew what to expect, and literally governments around the world are shutting down the economy. I had just spent $1 million renovating 2 legacy offices that were 1980s ugly to make them modern, beautiful, and attractive, so that I could bring people in, right, to an inspiring place to work. And all that's getting shut down. And I'm literally handing my staff, like, here's your phone, take that home and plug it in. And, we can't miss a beat here. We got to keep operating. Really highly uncertain environment. And so, you have an option at that point. You can put your head in the sand and pull it out in a few weeks or a few months and see how it went. Or you can say, okay, what is it that I can control right now? And act on that, right? So I think if I were to pick one thing is you have to be willing to act, and you have to be ready to be bold. And you also need to push through the fear of failure and be willing to fail.
And I was about to say that. So the one thing that prevents people to be decisive is, like, if something goes wrong, whose lap is going to fall on? It's going to fall on mine. So how do you deal with failure? So things inevitably go wrong. I mean, I think business owners know a lot of it is just a trial and error. You're trying to figure out the right answer. You're not going to know the right answer from the beginning, because if anybody knew all the right answers, they'd be a billionaire, trillionaire, whatever it may be. But it is an iterative process where you're moving towards the right answer, and sometimes you do make missteps. So how do you deal with that misstep? I don't want to say failure. I would say it's a misstep, or like just a bit of a wrong decision, or not the best decision. How do you deal with that, just mentally and then overall within the organization?
Yeah, so I think there's first of all the concept of fail fast. So I think the mistake that some people make is they become emotionally connected to their ideas, and they keep hoping it's going to work out. And it's like, no. You know what? Like, if you're trying something and you're doing something and the results aren't there, don't be afraid to pull the plug and say, you know what, guys, didn't work out. And that's okay. Here's 2 or 3 things that we learned from it. Here's an alternative approach or strategy that we can move forward, and let's go out and make it happen, right? It's if you don't like the word failure, that's okay. You tripped, you fell, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you keep going, right? So I think that would be the biggest thing, is just don't be afraid to pull the plug. Don't become emotionally connected to your idea. If it's really not working, then find a new approach, find a new strategy, and continue to push forward and move on.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I kind of said I don't like the word failure is because when people associate failure with the whole business going down, when that's never the case, right? You're failing on that one decision, but like you said, fail fast. I'd like to say fail cheap, and if you keep doing that,
for sure,
you're gonna get to that right answer. So one of the things, though, to get around. There's good failures, and I feel like there's also bad failures. There's things that you could avoid, and one of the ways you avoid that is what you just mentioned earlier, was mentorship, right? Because there's other people who have done it. No need to reinvent the wheel. You want to be at the forefront of the industry, and so you're making mistakes nobody else has made. And so in order to be there, you have to kind of work with other people, get a mentor, and understand that what did they kind of understand? What was their experience? What can you learn from their lives, and what they've done? So in your perspective, when is the best time to get a mentor? When should somebody first initially start thinking, I need to get a mentor? Or is this something that you feel like right from the get-go?
I think that it's always helpful to have somebody that can give you insight and that you can use as a sounding board. I think one of the things that's true is none of us know what we don't know. And that's actually the greatest risk, right? Is not knowing what we don't know and plowing ahead and discovering things that become very costly or problematic when it's too late. And so really it's never too early or too soon to have somebody that can provide you with those insights, ask you the tough questions, allow you to talk through your ideas, and help you understand what it is that you don't know, so that you can deepen your knowledge and make more well-informed decisions. So I think it's never too early, and that if you can find that right person, you shouldn't be afraid to ask. People do love to help. People love to share their knowledge and experience. It's gratifying for the mentor as well as the mentee.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of, I think there's a book called Anti-Fragile where the author has a library that one of his colleagues walks into, and it has like 20,000 books, and the guy's like, have you read all these books? He's like, no, why would I have a library of books I've read? They're useless to me. As soon as I know it, it's within
Yeah.
I need to figure out all the stuff that I don't know so that I can avoid making those crucial mistakes. So, but when it comes to mentorship, do you have just one guy, your go-to person? Do you have several mentors? How do you kind of evolve? Do you grow out of a mentor? How do you kind of build those relationships? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah. So I have a number of different people that I have great working relationships with, and they're often at this stage in my career more mutually beneficial.
Hmm.
So I'm actually part of a small broker group that gets together on a monthly basis, and we hold each other accountable. We talk about what's going well, what are we struggling with, what are you doing about this, what are you experiencing, and that kind of co-mentorship where we're actually helping each other out is incredibly valuable. And I'm very fortunate to be part of the Royal LePage family, because there's 20,000 agents, 700 offices, and a whole lot of other people who are running businesses just like mine, and being part of that network and tapping into it is really powerful. And the other thing is that I have a business coach, right? So as much as I'm pretty
Hmm.
confident in my knowledge about operating a business coach is helpful for someone like myself, because they can ask me the hard questions. They can remind me and help me stay on track with the goals and objectives that I put in place for the business. And they can often, connect me with resources that I don't currently have that might help solve a particular problem. So it's more leaning into the relationships that I have, and there's lots of folks in my life that are willing to give me a hand, but it's very reciprocal, right? They give me a call, I'm always getting back to them and helping them out as well, and so it's
Hmm.
really nice to have that kind of network to lean into.
So I guess as you're more seasoned within the career, is it safe to say you're saying you've created kind of a peer group? Everybody has their own domain, and then you're kind of working off of one another and helping each other where you can.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. That's working very well for me. I think different people might benefit in different ways, or even different industries. So there's certainly nothing wrong with having a single mentor. And I know, at different phases of my development, I've had that, but now it is more of a collaborative, peer-to-peer support
Mm.
process. But again, I've also got that business coach that helps me out as well.
Okay. Well, I want to change gears a little bit to some leadership questions.
Okay.
We've touched upon this a little bit right now, but leadership in terms of, I think that one of the biggest things, okay, one of the biggest, I would say, hurdles mentally for somebody who's kind of steering the ship at an organization is, on the one end, you definitely have to have very strong systems in place. You need to have strong rules in terms of gaining knowledge for everybody around you so that everybody's on the same page. It's not necessarily something that's like in your mind it has to be implemented. There's systems that are repeated so that everybody has predictability, everybody's on the same page, and
Yeah.
everybody knows what they're doing. So that's one end of it. But at the same time, you need to have innovation, you need to have creativity, you need to be able to respond to changing markets. How do you respond? How do you balance the difference between creating those systems? And because a lot of people, when they start creating systems, it's only about the systems, right?
Yeah.
And then when you're on the creative side, everything else is a mess. So
Yeah.
how do you, as a leader, balance those two within your organization so that you have predictability but room to think outside of the box?
Yeah. So part of it goes back to leveraging people's time and people's talent, right? So, there's certain things that I'm excellent at, and there's other things that I'm not as strong in. And so, for example, one of the things that I did when I first became the sole owner of Royal LePage Estate Realty, so I had a kind of a 5-year, mentorship process of taking over the business with my former partners, was I hired a full-time operations manager. And so her job really is to make sure that the back end of the company is operating really well, because I see those systems and processes as more of a management function than a leadership function, right? It's like, how do we make sure that we're operating effectively, delivering great service, and that, everything is buttoned down and tight. And so, having that operations manager allows me to play more of that leadership role. And one of the definitions of leadership that really resonates with me is the leader is the person that has a vision for what the company can become. Right? So it's not about what it is today, but it's what could it be 5 years from now. And so the leader is the one that has that vision. And sometimes that vision is the leaders alone. And sometimes that vision is crafted by consulting with and talking to others that are part of the company and saying, hey, what opportunities do you guys see? Where do you see the industry going? Where do you see this business going? What services could we be adding and evolving to make the business stronger, and more robust and meet our growth objectives? So, that vision is really the foundation of leadership. And then the leadership process is inspiring people, A, to believe in the vision, and B, to show them the path to achieving it, right? And to bring that to life. I think that's an important part of leadership. The other important part of leadership, though, is being able to respond to the moment, right? So again, if we go back to the COVID experience, I did not put my head in the sand, right?
Yeah.
I stepped up and I said, okay, guys, we don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you for sure, as a team, we're going to get through this. Yeah. And I stopped paying myself a salary to make sure that the cash flow for the company was managed. So as the leader, I'm like, the first person who should stop getting paid is me. Yeah. Because my team is a really important part of the fabric of this company, and I don't want to be laying off all of my staff. And then on the other side of this, in 2 months, 3 months, or whenever, I have nobody to help me run the company. And so I value each of those employees, and I wanted to protect them. And then I went to all my vendors and I said, all right, guys, here's the situation. What can we do to reduce the cash flow burden on the company? Because we don't know when the market's going to come back. And then you go to the team and you say, okay, we're going to continue to do our weekly sales meetings. And my commitment to you is I'm going to come to you with updates, and I'm going to talk to you about what's next. And I'm going to talk to you about how can we manage and get through all of this, right? And so projecting confidence and projecting that somebody is going to take responsibility and ownership for what's next, and really provide that reassurance, right? And in the early weeks of the pandemic, I literally had 95% of my agents coming to the office meetings virtually, right? Yeah. We were doing it via Zoom. And normally I have between 50 and 60%, because those meetings aren't mandatory. They're choose your own adventure. If that you get value out of them, you come to them, right? Yeah. And so that showed the degree of uncertainty that those folks had, but the fact that we kept doing those meetings and were there to support them helped all of those people get through it, right? And that's the other part of leadership, is being able to rise to the moment and inspire people that, what, we got this. We don't know all the answers, but we got this, and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I find when COVID happened, there was a lot of panic in the market, and there's a lot of, I think, entrepreneurs even who started slashing left and right their company, and I felt like you're ripping everything apart. When things turn around, which inevitably they will, you're going to have nothing left. Yeah. And the stuff that you do have left, that morale is not going to be what it was before, because it's kind of like they're seeing that, before the owner, anything happens to them, or the leader, I don't want to say owner, but the leader, it's taken out on everybody else first. Yeah. And so I felt like that was it. Not only do you get rid of really good talent, but even the talent that remains is going to be looking to jump ship. And at least that's from my perspective. And that kind of feeds into my other question, which is, when there's stuff that's there's good times, it's easy. Everybody, when the tide's high, all the boats are floating. Was when it goes out, you see who's wearing no swimming trunks. Yeah. But what I find that developing like a positive company culture that only comes into play when things aren't great, when things are kind of looking down. So what do you do within your organization? Not just that story that you gave me is like very powerful, but on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
To make sure that you cultivate a positive company culture, to make sure that, everybody's working as a team. What kind of things you as a leader are you doing to make sure that you have that kind of environment, and that is what kind of everybody has buy-in, because you could be saying stuff and nobody cares.
Yeah.
So how do you create that culture, and how do you get the buy-in from everybody within your organization?
So I'm actually going to step back for a second, and I want to acknowledge something, and I want to say something for all the entrepreneurs out there. So I talked about, as the leader, stepping up, taking charge, putting a positive face out there, controlling the things that you can control. But you all need to know that I was terrified. And to
Hmm.
be perfectly frank, I was terrified that I was going to lose everything, right? That's how serious it was. And those feelings are still very deeply ingrained there, right? I mentioned earlier I just spent $1 million renovating my 2 legacy offices as an investment in the future of the company, but that left me very cash poor as a business owner. And cash is king, right? Profitable business
Mm-hmm.
close their door if they run out of cash. And so, just for all the entrepreneurs out there, as a leader, I put a very positive, strong face forward for all of my people, but behind the scenes, I was scared, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's important to acknowledge the truth of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's one of the hard parts of entrepreneurship is the weight and the burden can be very heavy at times.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'll say is I went to my staff early in the process, and I said to them, so we actually laid off all of our part-time staff because they were actually going to be able to collect employment insurance, and actually be in pretty good shape, right? But for all of my full-time staff, I said, guys, to the very best of my ability, I'm going to do everything I can to lead us through this so that nobody loses their job. And one of the things that I did right out of the gate is I stopped paying myself. So I need to ask something of you that may or may not be necessary, but to help ensure the health of the company and to help protect everybody's jobs, if things get bad enough, would you be willing to take a 20% pay reduction across the board? And I let them get back to me privately, right? So nobody knew what each person said, so that there was no kind of collective pressure on everybody to say
Mm-hmm.
yes. But to a person within minutes after that meeting, which was a very hard meeting, they all said they would do it, right? And that's incredibly powerful because first I
Mm-hmm.
said, I care about you, I'm putting you first. And secondly, I said, collectively, are we willing to have each other's backs here? And the fact that they were willing to support that was really incredible. And the best part is we never actually had to go there, right?
Oh,
And
nice.
that's a particular win, right? Because we were able to manage the cash flow situation, and the market rebounded soon enough and strongly enough that the company was in good stead. And frankly, government support with the wage subsidy, which we collected for a few months, also was tremendously helpful. So, that's a big piece. But sorry, Harris, to get back to your question, um, I think a big part of it is how you communicate with people.
Yeah.
So what our core values are, right? Honesty, integrity, profitability, work-life balance, financial responsibility, and professionalism. Those are our 6 core values as a company. They're right on the wall in our primary training room, and they're values that I refer to. The next thing we talk about is that we have a family-friendly and family-like environment. So we have each other's backs and we lift each other up and we help each other out. And those are important things for staff. Those are important things for our agents. Our staff have a really clear mandate, right? They're dedicated professionals, helping dedicated professionals sell more houses, right?
Yeah.
Sell more properties, in fact, properties, because we have commercial team as well. So you hear the clarity of all those things, right? They come right off my tongue because that is part of the culture and the fabric of our company. And when I'm interviewing people who are interested in joining, or frankly that I'm trying to recruit, that's front and center in those conversations, because you know that when you come here, that's the culture that you're going to feel. And we do a lot of recognition for staff. We do recognition for our agents. We do social events and activities. This afternoon, we're going to be playing a company softball game, and we'll go to the bar after for a couple of drinks.
Oh,
So we
nice.
play together, we break bread together, we have fun together, and that camaraderie and that sense of familiarity and comfort, helps to build a strong, vibrant culture. And the staff are welcome to attend those things when they can, so that they're part of it as well, because we're all part of a larger family and a larger team. Does that answer your question, do you think?
I think it answers it wonderfully. I'm thinking, like, you know what? I want to leave the leadership portion at that note, because it's perfect. Yeah. And like I said, so I'm going to switch now, because I just want to leave it there, because it's good. And even the first portion really does answer the question. It's just about communication, and
Yeah.
just, I don't want to add to that, but yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, perfectly. So I'm going to now move into more habit questions, quick questions, to end off this interview. I know I've been giving you some difficult ones. I mean, they're easy for you. They're easy for you because you're living it. For a lot of people, they're difficult questions in that sense.
Yeah.
Habit questions. When do you wake up in the morning?
Oh, so I do everything wrong according to the book on successful people and entrepreneurship. True story. So I'm not a morning person. So
Yeah.
I'm not someone who's getting up at 5 or 6 or 7 and following the habits and routines that are advised of successful people. So perhaps I'm successful despite that.
Yeah.
But typically I'm getting up at 7:30. For the last 17 years, I've had a couple of small kids at home, and so getting them up, getting them fed, getting them off to school is part of my everyday. And to be perfectly frank, I often don't get to the office until 10 a.m. because once my kids are out the door, I like to sit. I like to have reflective time. I'll often read the newspaper, read professional materials that just kind of get me in the mindset of the business world and keep me well informed about what's going on in the broader economy and those kinds of things, because that's actually really helpful when it comes to managing a business as a broader perspective. But for myself as well, I'm actually an introvert. And so having time to myself actually helps me to build energy. And so that time in the morning is really important to me. But I also typically am at my desk until 7 o'clock at night. So my schedule perhaps isn't typical of a successful entrepreneur, but it works for me. So
I mean, I again, I would push back on that a little bit. I feel this is why I asked, because I feel like online everywhere it says you got to wake up 5 or 4, don't sleep, just keep working.
Yeah.
I find there's a lot more entrepreneurs like yourself who are waking up early. They're spending time with family. There's other priorities that aren't actually distracting you from your business, but building you up so that when you are working, you're the best you can be when you show up, as opposed to you're kind of all over the place, or you're only one track minded. Because I feel like when you're doing all these things, it opens up your brain as well. So I find that's why I asked, because I feel like 80%, 70% of people don't wake up at 5. There's nothing wrong with waking up at 5, but everybody's got a different kind of routine. So how do you structure your day? Do you structure it based on like mornings, afternoons, or is it just kind of like whatever task comes your way? How do you structure your work day?
Most of my standing meetings, whether it's with staff or staff teams, are typically in the morning. So my preferred method of working is to do the meetings, understand what's come out of those meetings, whatever actions there are. Typically, the staff will have more actions than I will because I've got lots on my to-do list. And then the afternoon is more about getting stuff done, having conversations, following up, or doing things like recruiting appointments or business planning appointments with my agents. So generally, kind of mornings are business management focused and making sure that the business is operating well and effectively. And the afternoon is more focused on business development, supporting the team and growing their businesses, because of course when they grow their businesses, I do better as well. And that tends to be it. And then usually the last kind of hour and a half of my day, things quieten down quite a bit after 5 o'clock. That's when I get caught up on any emails that I haven't seen, because I don't touch my email throughout the day because it just wastes too much time. But get caught up on emails that I've just decided to skip over because they aren't urgent enough, but I do like to clear my inbox before, and also look at and plan my next day. So what appointments do I have? Do I have any presentations that I need to put together? And so that last kind of hour to hour and a half of my day is making sure that my next day is well organized and prepared, so that on the fly I can still perform at a high level.
And last question, as we wrap up this podcast, what's the last thing you do before you go to bed?
Brush my teeth.
Yeah. No, fair
Yeah,
enough. That's awesome. Brush your teeth. That's
yeah,
it.
that's the truthful answer.
Yeah, awesome. You
Let's
know
leave it
what?
at
I
that.
really appreciate your time. I always love speaking to you. You give me so much insight on all this. Today was entrepreneurship. Again, I'm going to be putting the real estate podcast link below as well. It's always a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thanks for coming on, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and glad to end it on a laugh. Have a good one.
You too.